where are you at these days? Where are you calling in from? Where's your where's headquarters at?
I'm hailing from Orlando, brother.
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
Floridian.
Al
I'm a
always
Floridian.
lived
Everything that they
all the
say is
all
true.
through and through. All
Yeah, man.
born and raised.
Yeah, but like I got out west for a while. Like I lived in
Mhm.
Vegas. I was in Vegas for what was it, 16 years, and then Colorado for like 5 years. And now I always say this with like a bit of a question mark at the end of my sentence because I mean it was a blur. So like I got to be honest. Like when I say that timeline, like I can't even be certain that it's exactly that many years. But yeah, it's. I was out there for a little while.
Um, let me tell everybody who I'm working with today, and then maybe they can get some context on why everything was a blur. So give me a second, folks. Today we're talking to Ryan Penley, author of Man Up, Sober Up, host of the Next Fix podcast, and founder of My Rock Bottom Recovery Community, which has impacted over 215,000 people on Facebook. Ryan's story is raw and real. He's been in a coma, one in three states, in his words, tried to kill his own mother. But now, 6 years sober, he's living a testimony that rock bottom can become a launching pad. He's here to talk about recovery, resilience, and power reinvention. Welcome to the show, man. Thank you for being here.
Oh man, I appreciate you, Jeff. I appreciate you. Appreciate you making time for me, brother.
This is, folks, I was telling Ryan earlier, Ryan is my ideal guest on the Second Chance podcast. He's someone who's absolutely lived it. I tell people not to take advice from folks who've not walked in the path of the advice that they're giving. And I feel like Ryan is definitely a subject matter expert in a lot of life. And I'm excited to get to know you more, man.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm an open book, man. I got no I've been letting skeletons out of the closet for a long time. I feel like it's rather empty in there. Despite
Do
me
you,
actually being in a closet right now. I turned this closet into a studio. So like I am in the closet at the moment.
I was talking to Susan Snow comes on the podcast from time to time, and she's the one kind of helped me learn about PTSD in a deeper way of how what kind of helped her was writing. You can PTSD healing, you can write about it, you can talk about it, or write about it, or draw about it. I find that I enjoy talking. I'm like you. I'm an open book. I tell some things that are like my mom's like, oh my God. But I just kind of feel like it's helped me, man. I found peace with life. I found peace with things that I was kind of carrying with me that I felt like not really shameful, but just part of life. But just talking about it and letting everybody know, man, that sometimes it's good to put it out there and just let it go.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that because my wife, like when we first got together, and we've only been together about a year, and I was posting stuff, and she was just like against it, and I said, "Well, I'm too bad, so sad," because just like yourself and what you had just mentioned, like it's therapeutic, and once I felt that relief or that release, if you will, like that weight kind of go away, I was like, I'm gonna tell everybody everything. It really, I'm just not gonna hold back anymore, and it's worked out thus far.
Yeah. No, I could see that. Tell me, what's a day in your current life? What's a day in kind of your work day, or what's a day in your life look like these days?
Well, check it out, man. I actually just quit my job. This is I quit last Friday. Well, that's not entirely true because I was still taking calls, but I was in like high ticket sales, and it was a great gig, I guess, and so here I am. I'm schlepping somebody else's dream and product and everything else, and so it doesn't come without ups and downs. And I felt like I, I mean, talking about ups and downs, you eat with what you kill, right? And so in times when it got skinny, meaning lean, like sales weren't there, I was kind of struggling. I'm like, man, I gotta get the hell out of here. And so I did. And like literally, this is the first Monday that I haven't uh, hopped on calls for somebody else in a while. And so, anyways, today specifically has been a rather invigorating day. I suppose it was like liberating, you know. And basically, I just was working on my own
Yeah.
stuff, starting to kick around my old ideas. I'm expanding my coaching business again, and so I'm able to give, you know, from what I could tell, 100% into my own things and my own family instead of kind of just filling up somebody else's cup, you know. So that's, you know, that's where I'm at, and that's today specifically, brother.
Man, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to play this role on this day, man. Because here's what I'll tell you. And I have a sign, and I heard this years ago when I was trying to phase out of W-2 work as well. And I call it W-2 work because they're still great friends of mine. I just didn't want to work for the man no more. If you don't pursue your own goals, someone will use you to get theirs.
That's the truth, 100%.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all that bad of it. I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, it was checking off a lot of boxes. It really was. But you know, I'm not one much. I don't turn away from a challenge, and I don't turn away from change. And so here I am, you know, like reinventing myself again. But you know, I've gotten pretty damn good at it at this point in my life. I'm able to like
You
not even I wasn't even for people that like, oh man, you just left. I said, well, one, I was like an independent, it was contract work any damn way. So, but I was like, I'm not afraid at all. Like, like I kind of lean into whatever I feel gifted with or whatever I, you know, want to pour my energy into. And so then I just kind of move forward. And that's kind of where I'm at, man, you know?
do you feel like, and this is I want to add to this, but I'm curious of your opinion. This well put together Ryan, who's 6 years sober and who's kind of molded and turned his closet into this evangelical space where he can record and put out. Is he financially better off than 6 year ago, Ryan, to where you can make these decisions and not have any kind of repercussions from it?
Now check this out, man. This might ring some bullshit alarms, I guess. Like, but money has never really been a big deal with me. I know that
Yeah.
sounds crazy, man.
No, no.
It's always been energy. It's always been energy for me. And so even when I had absolutely none, and I mean none, I've been homeless. I've eaten a can of mushrooms that was like sitting on the side of the road. I've done that, right? Like, you know, that day and then even today where I've been pulling down, you know, let's call it 5 years ago, Ryan, right? Like I was sober, but I was making $10 an hour. And I was like, you know, I think I might want to do something about this, you know, because there's some things that you struggle to put together like a family and feeding other people. So I put some moves together in the last 5 years and managed to pull down, you know, a significantly amount of more money, right? Enough to have a family, buy a house and things like that, you know, check off some other boxes. But now
Yeah.
that being said, like I've always thought about it as energy. So if I've always found that if I've just been willing to accept money and then also provide service, like act in service of others, it just usually takes care of itself. But I guess to answer your question rather bluntly, I'm significantly different than I was, you
Love
know,
it.
working at Home Goods, and you know, and it served a purpose back then, man. Because I'll tell you right now, you used to be a cop. Like I was wanted in 3 states. It is hard to gain employment from anyone when you are actively wanted. Like there were warrants out, and so here I am trying to like get a job at Dunkin' Donuts. No way. Trying to get a job at Walmart. No way. Try to get. I mean, it was, you know, it's tough. People aren't really willing to
Yes.
have conversations, and I get it. I'm not mad at them. I'm like, I know I would have probably hired me either, right? So
Yeah, I mean that's because I've pursued those capers, right? I've pursued the guy who's wanted in 3 states and um, in that capacity. And I also worked at a home goods store after my law enforcement career for a brief period. So I understand. I mean,
right.
I was the overnight packer. I was the late shift down packer, restocker.
Yeah, man. Hey, but I'll tell you right now, man, those dudes work. That company works some people, man. I mean, I guess they do well,
Yeah,
I suppose, but man, that ain't light work, brother. That's yeah, they put it on you. That's for sure.
yeah. You touched on it, and you're in a coma, born it in 3 states, and you're flying by the seat of your pants. Where you have this rock bottom moment? What is this? And I guess before we get there, can you is there a point where it all started? Like, how did we get to be wanted in 3 states?
Yeah. Well, for a man that's familiar with the law, the quickest way you get there is to just ignore it, right? Like you get popped for something that's not all that out of line, and then you run, and then you get popped for something else again. It stacks up, and then you go to another state, and then you get popped for something else. And it just it starts to stack on you in time. So that's kind of how. I mean, I was like, when I say on the run, like, you know, I wasn't doing enough to where people were like really hunting for me, right? Like it wasn't like that. But I mean, my buddies got pulled over in Colorado, and man, those cops like drug every one of them out of that van looking for me
Yeah.
because I had been pulled over in that vehicle previously. And so they were so mad, man. They called me up and they're like, "What the hell is your problem, man? They just drug us out. They're looking for you." They didn't care that they all had drugs on them. They didn't care about that. They didn't care that they were under the influence. They didn't care about that either. They were just looking for me, and they didn't find me. And so, anyways, it was my my willful ignorance. Well, no, I was ignoring, right? Like I was just like, I didn't want to handle a damn thing. So I wasn't showing up for court dates. I wasn't paying no fines. I wasn't doing a single thing. As soon as they let me go, I was just like, I'm out of here. I'm getting back to doing drugs and drinking, and like I'm not even gonna try to comply with the rules, or I wasn't even into it at all. And I thought for sure I was going to ride the wheels off of this wagon and try to leave a decent looking corpse. That was the plan. But yeah, God had a different plan for me. So, here I am.
Where does that reckless behavior come from, Ryan? Is that was it like the bad people you hung around, or was it right? I had a friend one time say, they said, so he's hanging out with bad people, and I was like, no, he is the bad people.
Yeah. I was the instigator.
You hung there for a second. Did you say you were the
Oh,
primary instigator?
that is the truth, brother. That is the truth. I was
Yeah.
I was the ringleader. I was the ringleader in all things hood rat behaviored, right? Like I was alleyway commerce was like my thing. Like I would
What?
love, yeah. Yeah, I would go to another country, and I just was like chomping at the bit to like get in and just like buy narcotics from any shady individual that I could figure out. It was like that was the rush. It really was. It was part of it, right? Like it was like I really enjoyed that particular lifestyle. But you do that long enough, man, and it does compound on you, and it starts to wear
Yeah.
on your soul and your life, your health, right? It starts to chip away at you big time, and so that's what ended up happening, right? But for the life of me, I thought I was like the coolest guy ever for a long time, like, and that's just what I was doing, man. So I was dragging way too many people along with me, getting them to commit horrible acts all over the place.
You were yeah, that's what I was like thinking. I was like, in my head, I was I kind of closed my eyes and whatever thought, and I had you like the old Western outlaw or whatever, right? The one in 3 states, and you're riding out of town and type thing, right? It's kind of just playing in my head of Ryan being the guy that's on the run. But where does your turnaround moment? You at some point in time when you were like, you know what, I'm done. Where did that come from?
Right. So I mean, you know, as I mentioned, like my health went out on me quick. Well, not quick, but when it did fail me, and that's how I ended up in the coma. I ended up giving myself diabetes, and basically I was, I just I was doing a good job of wrecking the engine, and so once that started happening, I wasn't able to pull off what I had once been able to pull off. Thank God. right? And so that's how I ended up in the coma. And you might say, well, that's where you turned it around, and that's not the case. Like that's not even close to the case. That's when I ended up coming back to Florida. I left Colorado, and it didn't get better instantaneously. That's for sure. I stayed very well intoxicated for many years after that, and my health continued to decline, and I continued to push everybody away like a lot of people do when they hit rock bottom, and so I mean it just went on and on. So the rock bottom moment isn't necessarily like a pivotal like circumstance. It was like a time period, right? Like it was this time frame where I was just steadily at that in that that granite bottom cellar, and I was trying to dig further down and it wasn't happening. So like a lot of people, I kind of gave up. I thought that I was just gonna, like I said, I was gonna end up taking my own life one way or another. I mean, I wasn't actively doing that, but the will to live was gone. And so after a long enough period of time realizing like I wasn't going anywhere, and so I feel like it's actually in my book, like you look around and you realize like that the shit has hit the fan, right? And you are either going to perish, right? And you can accept that, or you can get to work, right? And so I just started getting to work. I realized I wasn't going to go anywhere, and where I was at was unacceptable. And so then I just started piecing together small efforts. And again, it was definitely not a singular event. It was a series of wins, mostly minute in nature, very tiny wins. I had to humble myself to like very small incremental change. And once I did that, that was like the key difference maker, man, was like the smallest of wins, being that humble and then celebrating those wins is how I pieced together, the longevity of the success. Right. And so it's very tough to put it in, to one singular event or time or a particular day or anything like that. It was the culmination of a lot of shitty decisions and then some pretty good small decisions, and those compounded on each other until, next thing you know, man, you've got a solid stride going and you're heading up and to the right in the best direction possible, So now, that being said, there was some real big wins in there, like the first time a buddy of mine held my hand, he prayed for me. That was the first time anybody had prayed for me. Well, to my knowledge, right? Hold my hand, praying for me in person, blew my mind. Did I get sober after that? No, but it was a big step. It was big. And I remember that day. So there's a lot of things like that, right? There's a lot of things that didn't necessarily make me quit drinking, but they added to the success factor. You know what I'm saying?
In the movies, we'd see this light come down, and you would have this moment, and but I wanted to tell you, my experience is exactly like yours. It was I had all the peak, and I'm everything's the life of the party, and like everything's going well, and life's going, and then all of a sudden it started to decline, and things started kind of, and it was a slow decline over time. And then when that valley hit, that rock bottom, as they say, was like you said, then you just kind of skirted right here. And you just lived in rock bottom for a series of events, series of events, series of events. And then a couple of people started talking. A couple noticed, hey, one of my friends said, "Hey Jeff, we're waiting for the bounce back. We're waiting for you. Hey, we're paying attention." And I was like, "Wait a minute, why y'all watching me?" And they're like, "Cause we know you're destined for bigger things or something like that." I was like, "Holy crap, you're watching!" And then just key people, right? Just give me just those little words of it. One of my buddies said, "I'm glad it was you because I couldn't go through it. You're one of the few people I know that can go through this." And I was like, "Ah, thank you, but thank you," right? So it was, I'm 100% relate to that, dude. I'm telling you, I lived
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I know a lot of people, they think it's one like, oh, when was it? And I just always with the most honest opinion, like it's just for people that really have gone through it. Actually, I envy people that get like a slap on the wrist and they're like they get a really bad hangover or they don't remember the night before and they turn their life around. I'm like, wow. I get jealous. I'm like, man, I wish I wasn't such a jerk. I would probably would have done that too. Seems like the easier road, I suppose.
We just adult differently than other folks do. That's I had someone tell me that one time. They're like, Jeff, you were fine. Just took you longer to grow up than it did the rest of us.
It's the truth.
What do you so take me back here just for things. Give me a little timeline of when all this like you're on the land, but what about mom and dad and family and what does that influence look like for you, Brian?
Yeah, man. Well, my father was a cocaine mule in the 80s, and I didn't know him much. And he, you know, I don't know if you ever seen the movie The Mule, but like it was like I felt like, that was my long lost dad, but it was strange to actually talk to him like many, many years later and see all the similarities in our lives, even though like he was never there. So that was very peculiar, right? Like it was very strange for me to see so many things aligned with him, and I never knew the guy really. Now my mom, she's currently in addiction. Oh, and he got sober, by the way. So my father did. He ended up, I think he's like 8 years sober. And we still don't talk. We don't talk, and that's okay. But my mom, she's in active addiction. She still actively drinks, but and you kind of mentioned it. And she's not well, and she accused me when the both of us were out of our minds, and she accused me of trying to cut her head off. And so, in Florida, if somebody calls the cops, then, somebody's going to jail. And I don't really remember what happened, but there was, I suppose a tussle. And now I'm not the first one that she's accused of trying to cut her or trying to bash her head in or cut her head off. Like she's not well either. And she's accused several other people, even my biological father. When I did talk to him, he's like, oh yeah, she accused me of trying to kill her too, back when you were a baby. I was like, oh, wow. But nonetheless, I was sitting in jail and I was in there for a little while. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, like normally if I was just in the drunk tank, I'd be out, right? They just kind of send me on my way after a few days, couple days or whatever. But I was in there for a while. And then I read her report, and it said on there that I tried to cut her head off. And so that stung. Why? Because I couldn't really remember. I couldn't tell you with certainty that I didn't. I'd like to believe that that's not exactly what happened, but I couldn't tell you for sure. Why? Because I was blacked out. I don't remember nothing. And so to this day, I ended up. That was one time where I did actually show up for probation. I showed up for probation, and I did it right, and I paid my fines, and I did my thing, and I was trying to get my life together. And so those efforts were a little bit different. And so, it ended up being adjudication withheld, and she's still very, very ill. I don't talk to her at all just because it's a high risk kind of a scenario. I think about it though. What would it be like if she called and said, "Hey, I need help"? I've actually thought about that, and I really don't. I have no idea. I have no idea how I would react, man. I really don't.
I get that. No, boundaries, man, especially for those that are the closest to us, where you have to put that up and they have to stay there until everybody can come and come together, not come over the lines or whatever, but to where you can come together. I experienced, I had to do some similar things, and I had to do it for I had to do it for what I thought would be the better good for them in most cases, and not me, because I was just getting to be where I was getting on everybody's nerves, and I was just kind of driving everybody crazy. But I realized like it was I just needed to pause. It doesn't have to be forever, but I understand, and folks, for you, if I want to tell the audience, like if for the folks that's not, most of my friends have those good positive relationships, and it's not always in every walk of life, and it's hard to process when you say, yeah, I don't want, I'm not talking to my mom, or me and my mom are disconnected right now, whatever that might look like. A lot of people struggle with that, but that's part of this enabling that we try to fix. Is you got to press pause and work on you sometimes, and it gives, what they don't realize is you're also pressing pause for them to work on them so you can come back together.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. The people that do know, the family that knows her, and She doesn't talk to anybody, really, but you mostly just ask for money and things, and so it's tough. I mean, it's not ideal, that's for sure. But like you said, man, those boundaries have to remain until all parties are, on an even playing field. Somewhat. Like I said, like if she called and said I need to get help, I don't. I'd like to believe I could, harness enough forgiveness in my heart to make a move for her. But
Yeah.
that's I could tell you, man, it's a pretty far fetched kind of a scenario that one is.
No, I understand. And that's it'll all, when you look at this is a puzzle piece, right? And when I speak, I've been working on some content about, like, you thought you were falling apart. Actually, you're probably falling into place, because look at where we are now. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. Like, you're struggling in your first bout with sobriety. What's that first 6 months look like? And when did it shift from surviving to helping?
Well, now when you say first 6 months, like how many of the first 6 months, right? Like,
That's right.
like how many
Yeah.
times did I make it, and then like had to hit the reset button, not intentionally, but like, okay, well, here we go, day one again. And so that happened a lot. And so now once I really started getting traction, um, I'll tell you right now, I had the pieces that were missing in my efforts were accountability, um, support, despite the support being there before, but I was approaching it disrespectfully. Right. So I went back at the same support system that was my cousin. And now I added some other pieces intentionally. I created a plan, to put her at ease and to gain her support once again. And this time, the last time that it worked, I had to have other variables in place to pull it off. And so, that being said, that first 6 months, well, I would say maybe the first 3 months, it was white knuckling it, in the trenches. It didn't even start off a day at a time. It was 15 minutes. 15 minutes is about all I could really, I could chop up that time frame into something I could handle. And so I would say, I'm not going to drink for 15 minutes. And so, you know, if I didn't have that support and that accountability in place, I wouldn't even pull that off. Even when I was at Home Goods, I was still drinking. I'd have a bottle in my locker, and I would go back there, and I would, and I'd tell myself I'm not going to do anything until 11:30, and then here it is, 11:22. I'm in there, and so nonetheless, that when I did start to pull things off, there was a good amount of white knuckling it though, and I just had to fight. It was a pure dog fight. But I would say that pure dog fight kind of led up towards the month, right? And then, you know, the degree to which you start to feel better is unimaginable if you can sit in the success, right? I think that that's important. So what do I mean by that, right? So once you get to that month, you need to really put some pieces together, like you were talking about, like writing and things like that, man. When you start to observe things and you start to look around and at least recognize how much is different because of that choice that you had made every day for 30 days, right? You've got to recognize these things. And so once you start to do that, right, you can kind of reinforce that success from the first month. And I don't think that anybody's going to last much further than that if you don't, right? So what remained and continued to be a part of that success was accountability. I didn't screw over my support system, so I still had them, right? And then I leaned on my successes, even though that they were rather modest. I leaned on them and I grew them, right? So by observing them and working on them continuously, those small successes turned into larger ones. And then if you can ride that wave, man, then that first month turns into 2 and 3 and then 6. So I feel wholeheartedly that is the process, that is the formula.
And you're able to take this to where, what is you walk through this in this survival mode, but there's a point in time when you start changing to helping, and you start becoming this mentor to everyone else. What is that? How does that transpire for you?
Yeah, man. You know, I, I believe that a lot of people that are on the better end of recovery, I feel like it comes with the territory. And so that being said, there's a lot of people out there that have gained success in recovery, but I chose personally to start sharpening skills, communication skills, everything from writing the book to starting a podcast to speaking about it to sharing it. And then I started also working with other skills like, empathetically listening to people, right? Motivational interviewing. And I found that I had a knack for that, right? I had, and I honestly, I kind of chalk it up to being a bartender for so long. I talked to so many people in Las Vegas as a bartender, like from around the planet, that I found I could talk to anybody, and they were always willing to share with me, right? So I'm like, wait a second, man, that's just like a natural gift. And so if I can hone these other skills, then I can really turn this into something that can be an effective vehicle of somebody else's change, right? If I could package these skill sets up along with my natural gifts, then I can actually hold somebody by the hand and help them get past that 6-month mark or 30 days or whatever it is, And so that's really what I've been working on for some time now, man. Probably after I want to call it like after the second year of sobriety, I started really kind of realizing that it was like, it wasn't meant to just end at me. I had to pass this torch along. And in the first 2 years is when I really went around. I kind of did a tour. First of all, I turned myself in all 3 states, right? I went and I turned myself in Colorado. I went around and I was just giving out money. I'm like, okay, time and money. All right, I'll turn myself in. What I owe you? Okay, here you go. I go to Las Vegas. I'm like, okay, here I am. You know what I owe you? And I was just like, I did that around the country pretty much. And then, and I said sorry to a lot of people. And I kind of I managed to maybe not mend all of the relationships completely, but I at least was able to show up and let them know that I was legitimately different. And that was a big deal. So that was like the first 2 years. It's just like traveling around, saying sorry, paying dues. And then after that, I started really working on the abilities to get a larger reach and start helping people that were probably that are in the shoes that I'm familiar with wearing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 90, 95 to 99% of those people you interacted with are just happy that you're in a good spot, right? We take for granted how much people actually maybe care a little about you a little bit, and glad that you're not self-destructing and riding in that path that you were. There's a small faction that could give two craps, but most people in that moment when you're apologizing, they're appreciative not for the apology, but they're just happy that I know from my experience was like when I'd have people do something dumb and then come back to me, and I'm like, I'm not mad at you. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you didn't hurt yourself. You didn't hurt nobody else, right? Just one of those moments. And I think the other thing is when the more you talk about it, the more you just kind of put it out there. It just helps. I felt guilty because I was my situation. I carried guilt because I felt like I let a community down. I felt like I had let a lot of good people that had invested in me, I had let them down just through my own plain stupidity. So I let the guilt carry along with me for probably 2 years, like you said, Ryan. So yeah, I
Yeah.
totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's but it's a gift though, really. That's how I look at it.
What do you think? What do you think people get wrong about the reinvention part? Like, what do they get wrong about reinventing their lives after that moment, or that or addiction in general? Let's use that. Like, what do you think that we get wrong about the reinvention part?
Well, I believe this wholeheartedly that our addiction can be a gift, right? And so, what do I mean by that? Well, you know, Mother Teresa, she was an addict, but she was an addict for world peace, right? She was probably putting herself in harm's way entirely too much. And so if she was pursuing crack cocaine with that kind of a tenacity, right, it'd be a different, obviously they wouldn't be telling stories about it, but make no mistake about it, that woman was addicted to something. It just happened to be useful, and it happened to be good. I mean, Steve Jobs was addicted to innovation, right? And he also had foregone and kind of like, people said it was rough to work with him because his pursuit was that of an addict. He was willing to step on people, drag people, do whatever it was to pull off, a world-changing kind of a innovation. Yeah. Like, I mean, and so there's these people that have addictive nature. It's just that whatever you pour that energy and tenacity into is how they will speak about you or how you will perceive yourself. And so it's no different than top-notch athletes. And so what do people get wrong when in recovery and reinvention? Well, they try to, one, dull down their addiction, right? Modesty is not in my DNA. It is not in the cards. It is not there, right? Like my my ability to play it cool about those types of things is not there. So why fight against it, right? Why not just take all of that energy, that tenacity, that pursuit, that desire, the same desire that, I could get drugs with no money, with no, like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I could somehow pull it off every time. So why not take that same ingenuity, that same, like I said, the tenacity, the pursuit, like that same, willpower to make something happen, like cocaine manifest out of nowhere. Take that same function, that same ability, but do it for something good, for the good of others. And so the one thing I can say that can't exist. Well, let me rephrase that. The one serious difference between why we talk about those addicts that have changed the world and done so great and those addicts that we feel so bad for and we have pity for is selfishness, right? If you can forego the selfishness and get addicted to things that help others and not just yourself, because you are helping nobody by putting alcohol down your throat. I mean, it literally cannot help anybody. It cannot help anybody. And so if you just take that and you do anything that helps other people with that same, uh, ferociousness, right, then you will undoubtedly be known as a great person. And so I think that's the key difference maker, right? One addict is selfish and the other addict is selfless. And if you can be an addict and selfless in the pursuit of adding value and helping others, you can change the world.
Yeah. Nah, you spot on with that. It takes you, your path takes you into your recovery coaching program, and you just touched on that, but expand on that for us. It's like, what is your approach and how, and here's what I'm going to like, listen, man, this guy's got more qualifications than doctors with PhDs when it comes to dealing with how to deal with your repurpose your mess. Right, this Ryan has got more experience. He's got more on OJT
Yeah.
than any folks like that. So I'm curious. I wanted to like that's what's important to me. Let me tell you why. Um, you rewind it. I would have loved to have met you because we share some of the same destructive type behaviors. Mine wasn't one in three states, but I still did my own share of recklessness, right? But I remember when I was riding in that rock bottom, is my friends were like, maybe you ought to talk to somebody, maybe you ought to get some help, and I'm like, okay, yep, find me somebody who can relate to me. I'll go talk to
Mm.
anybody y'all want me to, but a lot of your counselors like the experience side. We didn't have Riverside and Zoom and virtual and all the tools that we have now. Is I value your opinion in a lot of ways, equal or if not more than someone who's gone to college but lived a really good life and had all things perfect and has never, they just got a degree and they have, and I love those guys, but you rank a little higher for me just because of your experience. So what makes your approach different from traditional models, Ryan?
Well, because well, much to your point is that a person can almost tell instantaneously when somebody's either giving them advice or they're telling them what to do, and they're either hypocritical or they're ignorant, right?
Yeah.
It's like a parent who's telling their kid not to do drugs, but at night they're in the garage smoking a little bit of weed, or you know what I mean? And the kid knows that. So then it's just everything's out the window, right? Like the kid is not going to listen to anything. There's no way in hell that kid is going to make their lives better as a result of the tutelage of the person that is hypocritical or ignorant, right? So it's one of the two, right? A lot of times. So when somebody does come along like myself, and it's like, I know what it's like to be a guy working for $10 an hour, not a date in years, not a woman in sight for a long time. You know, you're riding the LB train, right? You packed on enough pounds to where you're like 285, and you can't see your better parts at the toilet, right? Like this is the kind of guy, you know. I'm like, hey man, I get you, right? And so I also know how to get you to the other side of that. And so what I will implement is tools that are proven, science-based approaches. But there's a couple of difference makers too for me personally. I lean to the future, right? I don't spend too much time trying to talk about what happened to you when you were a kid and unpack the trauma, because honestly, you know, that it plays a role and it's relevant, but it's not moving us forward. Right. So I don't like unpack people's childhoods and things like that. I mean, yeah, it's a part of it. It's a part of my life that my father was a cocaine mule and my mom was still in active addiction. There's no doubt about it that it plays. There's some piece of that inside of me, and it's a part of the equation. But what is it doing for us, right? And so I lean solution oriented, right? I lean towards the future, and so a lot of the approach is about, well, what are we going to do next? Like, okay, you're right. You know, you came from an unfortunate family. You may have you didn't get the promotion that you planned on, or, you know, you took a ding and your wife left you. All right. Well, what next? And so that's really where I get boots to ground in moving somebody forward and getting past these circumstances that they might be up against that aren't ideal. And I listed a few of them there, but, you know, I mean, that's who I'm helping. Right. And that's who I'm making sure, like, by the time that I get done with them, I'm moving them across the finish line that we had agreed upon at first. Right. So like we set our sights into the future, and then, you know, we empty the tank and moving towards that. And it's never a straight line. We both know that, right? It's never a straight line. But the idea here is to cultivate progress and to maximize potential, right? So, you know, that's what it looks like, brother. Because you're right, man. If I had a nickel for every person that told me to get my life together, I mean, I mean, I was at near death so many times, and like you said, I'm not mad at that doctor. He had a good life. He was concerned, and he was telling me I'm going to die. But here I am sitting in a hospital bed, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, you haven't almost died. What the hell do you know about it? Right? And so that was, you know, I was like, you don't know how cocaine smells, man. What are you going to tell me about? Right. And so it's, you know, I do have a very helpful approach because of that particular fact, right? On the job training, as you pointed out, is a reality, right? So I might as well put it to use. And it's not behaving or pretending that I am somebody that I am not, right? And so, no, I'm not a PhD doctor, right? That is not the guy that you're going to get, right? But I am the guy that could turn things around and start getting some ladies back in your life and start getting some muscle definition in the mirror. And then that's enough to really put a guy's life back together. It sounds superficial, but it can help. You know, so why not check off some of those boxes?
How old are you now, Ryan?
44. Wait, hold on a second. 43.
It doesn't do say age up. I always try to age up one. Listen, no, folks. Some of these folks are listening, and they're not watching. Man, you got your hair done. You got you wearing black. That's true to the wearing black code. But you're not. You look like you're taking good care of yourself. Looks like you got definition in your face. You got all the things. And you mentioned, I don't know if we've got this recorded, but you mentioned girlfriend. And of 1 year. It sounded like. So I mean, it looks like it's just you're
Oh, that's
putting
wife.
all the pieces of your puzzle, all right. Everything's laying in there.
Yeah, no, brother, it's a wife, man. Sorry, I guess I may have thrown. I didn't have that. No, it's a wife. I got a family. I got a kid
Yes,
now, and
yes.
so like,
Yeah. I was going to
and if
ask
you
you
would ask me,
how old's
if
your
you would
kid?
ask me, he's one. He just turned one on the 27th of
Yes.
March,
43 years old,
and that I
man.
mean that.
43 years old,
Oh yeah,
1 year old. Your clock. You just went back in your head and where you're going. I'm telling you this from experience because I was 35 when I had my first one. My clock went back because now you're going to experience children sober.
it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And
Big deal,
he's
dude.
never gonna know. I'm gonna be open about the guy that I was, but he's never gonna see
Yeah.
that guy,
Same.
you know? And that's a big deal.
Yeah. You will find if you, I'm very open about this. I waited until my kids were old enough to process my conversations before I started having them, because I sat down with them and said, "Hey, I got some things that I want to start talking about, and I want you guys to know, and I want y'all to know how I grew up and how I lived and how your grandmother lived, and just how our lives were very different than y'all's. And so just I need you to know where you come from, but it's not a burden to you. We've took care of all the burdens. Y'all don't have to live what we lived." And so that's kind of where the Second Chance podcast. It was around the time when I just felt like timing was good for me to tell it and for them, because if they go to school, their friends are like, "I heard your mom said your dad was on a podcast talking about all the hell he raised it." I just wanted them to be like, "Yeah, that's his past, not mine."
It's the truth. I'm excited about that, because I I mean you've changed the family tree, brother. And I mean honestly,
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat, right? Like I couldn't tell you how many generations of maybe, because I think like my grandparents, they did a better job of hiding it back then. I don't know how it worked, but it wasn't quite the same, like I guess, but nonetheless, I drew a line in the sand and it ain't happening no more, man. It's not. And so I'm
I,
gonna
if
arm
you
my
you may not be able to see it with our screens the way they are, but that's breaking the curse is on my background for that reason. And that's something that a lot of my conversations is like yours now, is where we're able to talk about how we're able to rewrite our family trees and break that curse.
it's the truth, man. And it's probably the greatest accomplishment that I've had.
Um, I got something else I was going to ask you as we wrap up, but tell folks how you want them to get in touch with you. And I got one more question I was going to end with. How do you want folks, and if you got an
Yeah.
ideal client or somebody would speak to that for us, just so, because listen, I'll tee you up for this. Listen, I can tell y'all without an absolute doubt that the two people on this podcast, 100% of the top people right here could have used each other's help when we was going through all the stuff that we was going. So I know you know someone out there that needs to hear this episode, needs to connect with Ryan, needs to hear our shared stories, because I'm on one side, he's on the other, but we all look right here's where we crossed. And we get to cross here tonight. So let everybody know who your ideal client is and how they can get in touch with you, Ryan.
Yeah. And if you're a man and maybe you slipped a little bit, whatever that might look like for you, um, maybe you were slipping, whatever that might look like. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe your wife is threatening to leave. Maybe you don't have the respect of your children. Maybe you just don't have that income like you really like. Maybe you want to reinvent the self that you've turned into and make it more ideal for the potential that you used to think that you were capable of, right? And so I'm here to help you realize that potential. And so, I mean, if you're a guy and you think you've got a better future and better days in front of you, well, one, I agree with you. And two, you can reach out. You can go on ryanpenley.org, right? Or if you just want to start a free practice run, if you will, there's a 21-day free fitness and sobriety challenge at myrockbottomrecovery.com. And then also, you can check out the Facebook page. It's My Rock Bottom Recovery. And so you can check out all the content that we got on there. And so it's supportive, and people trying to reinvent themselves and make the most out of the rest of their years here.
Folks, take advantage of that. That's a big deal. And like I said, we all know someone. And folks, you're going to know someone who needs to hear this episode. So thank you for sharing it. But here's what I was going to ask you as we wrap up, and it's a great place I think to put this. But that person who's listening to our episode right now, that's been where you are, and we've asked someone to share this, and this is you talking to them. What would you say? Um, what would you say to that version of you that was still lost, that maybe speaks to them?
You just got to get up one last time, right?
Mm.
No matter how many times you have fallen down again and again, right? This is why I say fall down 7 times, get up 8, which is biblical, but it's not about the math of 7 versus 8. It's whatever. If you've fallen down 99 times and you get up the 100th time, all that matters is you get up that last time. So, but there's a flip side of that coin, is that you can't quit getting up. And you never know when that last time is really going to click. You really don't. And so you might be a hell of a lot closer than you think. So you've got to get up again and again and again, because one of these days it's going to click, or maybe one of these days you got the right support around you, right? And so whenever that does happen, right, what it requires is that you continue to get back up, right? And so that's one piece of it, right? And the other piece of it is that start small, right? Celebrate your wins. And if you're humble enough to do that, you will win exponentially, right? If you're willing to start small enough to where you're humbly able to gain some wins, it will snowball into a massive success a hell of a lot faster than you could imagine.
Ryan, when I speak on the puzzle of life and how we're putting pieces together. And sometimes the frame is starting to come together, and you might have little pieces over here, and they all come in. And sometimes the pieces don't fit. And I pulled up one of my quotes. But you're absolutely someone who has walked, is baptized in the fire, who's lived life, who owned everything. But here's what I'll tell you: as the title of curse breaker and hope dealer, because you become one of those hope dealers that I get on my podcast that gets to get out and provide this message to other people. But life isn't a straight path; it's a puzzle, one that doesn't come with a picture on the box. And that's what I found when I was thinking about you. And you wasn't necessarily falling apart. I think you were just falling in place. And to be able to serve and live the role that you get to do now, to impact and help others, man. So I wanted to leave you with that, brother, because it was pulling on me a little bit to just give you that encouragement sometimes you need as well. But I can't thank you enough for being with me tonight and letting me learn more about you. And I tell you, I say this a lot, but I have this feeling I'm gonna coach you back on here so we can talk about some other craziness at some point in time.
I'm 100% down for that. Whenever, brother. I'm always up.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you, and I appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, man.